Welcome to the GRE Reading Comprehension Intro. In this video, we are going to talk about the different kinds of reading comprehension questions you can expect and the actual layout of the verbal section and how the reading comprehension section questions will appear. That way you can anticipate and pace yourself better on the section. So first off, the reading passage, how long is it? Which is, of course, is always an important question from a pacing standpoint. You could have a very short 80-word reading prompt, or you could have one that is as long as, or sometimes even slightly longer, maybe 457 words long, I think is the longest one that I've ever counted. So quite a range. Now the answers to these questions, this is important, will always be based on information in the passage. So you do not have to bring in outside information, nor should you begin to despair if you realize, as is the case with many reading passages, that they are on some hopelessly obscure topic that you know nothing about. Everyone is on an even playing field. Most people don't know anything about that. And even if someone knows something about that, it doesn't really matter. Again, all the information that you need will be contained in the passage. In terms of the number of reading comprehension questions, they're actually the exact same as the number of text completions and sentence equivalence questions, meaning there are 10 each, 20 questions total. The order, and this is important, is always the same. And later in this video, I'm going to show you exactly where you can expect the text completions and where you can expect the reading comprehension questions. And this is really going to help you from a pacing/strategizing standpoint. Therefore, you'll know how to better work through the section and pick off those questions that you feel most comfortable answering. First, though, let's talk about the actual prompt format, because not every reading passage, as you got from the other slide, is the same length long, nor does every reading passage have the same number of questions after it. So let's start with that short reading passage. It's about 100, 120, usually less than 140 words long, and usually has 2, though sometimes it even has 3 questions after it. Then there is the medium passage, which is usually around 190 to 250 words long, so it jumps up a little bit. And there's usually, I would say, 3 questions if I had to find an average, but expect anything from 2, sometimes even as many as 4 questions after a medium passage. Finally, that leaves us with the long reading passage, which again is upwards of 450 words, but can range anywhere from 350 to 450. It is always followed, however, by 4 questions. So you know if you're reading a long reading passage, get ready for 4 questions, one after the other, relating to that passage. Finally, there's something called the paragraph argument, which is the one that accounts for the 80 words, meaning there usually aren't too many words next to a paragraph argument. Also, what's important is there is always 1 question, and never more, to the paragraph argument question type. Now let's talk about question format. Most of the question format will be what you have come to expect on almost every standardized test, and that is 5 possible answers, one of which is correct. So that's business as usual. What is not as common, or what is typical or very specific to the GRE, is the multiple answer question. What this means is that there will always be 3, not 4, 5, 6, etc., but exactly 3 answer choices, any which can be correct. So you could have answer choice B, that could be an answer. You could have A and B, or you could even have A, B, and C, or some variation of 2 possible answer choices. It's usually very straightforward that you're dealing with a multiple answer question on the reading comprehension section, because again, there's always 3 possible answers, and they have these little brackets around them. Next, there's the select the sentence question. This one's actually very rare. Unlike the multiple answer question, in which you may see 2 or 3 in a section, you may go through an entire section without even seeing a single select the sentence question. Again, this is where you look into the passage and you actually highlight the question. Now, there is a separate module for this, because I know this is an odd question type, so you may want to take a look at that module afterwards to see exactly what this question looks like. Now for the layout of the verbal section. Why this is important is anticipation, pacing, and strategizing. You want to know where the questions are so you can figure out how much time you can budget. You will also have your strengths and weaknesses, and if it turns out that reading comp, after doing all these modules, becomes one of your strengths, well, it's good to know that text completion comes at the beginning, and you may want to go directly to the reading comprehension section. Of course, this will depend on your skill set, but here we have the layout. Reading comp is sort of sandwiched between the vocab, and at the very end as well, you will also have reading comprehension. Now, where it gets a little bit more specific is the first round, questions 7 through 11, usually have the long passage. That is one of the sections you will see tests. They have a long passage and a paragraph argument, or 2 short passages. As for the long passage, you will only get 1 long passage per GRE test, meaning out of the 2 verbal sections, only 1 will have that long passage, which of course is good news given the length. 12 through 15, we know, is the sentence equivalence, which will be followed by, again, the other reading comprehension, which usually consists of medium passages and a paragraph argument. So if you count, you typically get 2 paragraph arguments per verbal section. You may actually do very well in reading comprehension, but be full of fear or trepidation when dealing with a paragraph argument. So it's good to know where those occur in the verbal section. Now, this is more or less what you'll see almost every single time. There may be a slight variation in terms of the long passage coming between questions 16 and 20. Could happen, but for the most part, this is what you're likely to see, and you will always see text completion before the first batch of reading comprehension, and you will always see reading comprehension last with the sentence equivalence in between the 2 reading comprehension parts. The takeaways from all this, of course, is, again, the pacing. But it's important to know your own strengths and weaknesses. RC can take longer for most than TC and SC, but of course that depends on your own skill set. What I've found, though, is that students typically struggle with the triple blank text completions the most out of the text completions and sentence equivalents, and of course struggle the most in RC with either the tough long paragraph argument question or, and this shouldn't be too surprising, the very long passage, which in addition to having hard questions requires you to do a lot of reading. Now, to familiarize yourself with your strengths and weaknesses, with the outlay or layout of the test, the way that you can expect sentence equivalence in between reading comprehension, etc., is to actually do practice tests. That way you don't have to find yourself memorizing what you just saw. You've actually experienced it, and you can already adapt your strategy to your strengths and your weaknesses.